Hello, Charlie TCG here, and welcome back to Looking Ahead, the series that I break down and analyze the meta, what's happening in Japan, talk about it, and how that could impact our format. Today's big discussion is the meta evolving too much for Lost Box to keep up with. Definitely seeing a little bit of a back burner right now due to some of the techs that are flying around. We're also going to look at the new cards revealed from the 151 set. What are the Kanto Pokemon that have been revealed? As well as look at the City League results, what are the top decks, as well as their meta placement. If you're new to the series, I do this every Monday night UK time, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Right, let's join in. So let's see the new cards here. There are the EXs, of course, the starter Pokemon from Kanto, Venusaur, Charizard, and Blastoise. Venusaur is alright sort of thing. Once you turn, if it's in the action spot, you get to heal 60 damage from one of your Pokemon, but the attack gets confused or poisoned. It's alright, but if it's not asleep or if it's not paralyzed, people really don't tend to see this. Yes, poison's really good if you think of Radiant Sneasler, can deal this damage a bit higher, but being a stage 2 and quite expensive attack cost, not particularly as good. Blastoise EX is a very solid ability. The 30 less damage from attacks, you attach a V-Guard as energy to it, you're potentially having 390 HP, and a very good attack for 2 water energies, 140 damage, and then discard 2 water energies from your hand, and this does 140 damage for each card you discard. Doing 280 damage for 2 energies is very, very powerful, even if it's on a stage 2. If you think of the likes of Xian Pao as well as Excalibur, you can get these energies very easily, always in your hand, even with superior energy retrieval. So it could actually be pretty good in like a Xian Pao, even Palkia list. So I really like that it could be used. But unfortunately, Charizard EX is in fact pretty okay. This Brave Wings attack for 60 damage, and if it's got any damage counters on it, does 100 more damage. With Magma Basement, for 1 energy, doing 160 damage is very, very good. But it's amazing that it's a lot other attack. 330 damage for 5 energies, but you discard 3 energies from this Pokemon. Yes, it seems quite expensive, but if we think of Magma Basement Armoroos, you can get these out pretty easily to get the energies moving around. But we also have the Charizard from Pokemon Go, which has the ability, any energies attached to one of your Pokemon, it's 2 fire energies instead of 1. So if you have one of these abilities in play, you have 3 energies attached to Charizard, you're also doing 330 damage. That's incredibly good by pretty much KOing nearly everything, which is insane. So we might actually have a competitive Charizard on our hands, so that's a bit scary, especially for our wallets. And we've got some really cool sort of item cards as well as supporters. Erica's intervention is really, really good because you get your opponent shows their hand, and you get to put a basic Pokemon from there and put it on the bench and switch to the active spot. This is very good to get like cards like Lumineon, or potentially a Pokemon which they may not want to have out, like a Drapion if you're against Mew. They can reveal it, put it on the bench, switch out to the active spot, and then get that immediately punishing KO. I really like this. It's also really good in sort of walling stall decks. So I really think Erica is in a very good situation to help in control, as well as to limit the answers out to which Pokemon. Then our other sort of item card, we did see a Snatch Charm where your opponent reveals their hand and you choose a Pokemon you find them and put it at the bottom of their deck. Very similar to this, we are seeing some more destructive, we're seeing very creative options Pokemon going with, more like revealing your opponent's hand. So I think there's a lot of control options in this sort of list. The Snatch Charm is very good. Like I just said with Erica's intervention, if they have that Lumineon, you can use that as well. Snatch Charm and put it at the bottom of their deck. And Leftovers is very, very good. If it's in the action spot, at the end of your turn, heal 20 damage from it. Very, very good to get that little bit of healing in. And if you think of decks like Goodra, very, very powerful to get that instant level of healing in from the opponent. So let's look at the City League results. How has it sort of changed? Well, we're seeing here Gardevoir is now back on top by being 15.4%, but the rest of it is a lot more decks have drought up. We saw a huge increase of Xian Pao, actually getting up to nearly 12%. It kind of went from, I thought it'd be like a Miraidon, it'd be popular and start to disappear, but every week it's getting more and more consistent. At one stage, it was the biggest sort of deck, which is going in the top 8. Lugia definitely focusing more on the colorless sort of build, where in fact the single strike build didn't in fact get a single win. Going more with the Weirdeer or potentially Snorlax sort of variant, trying to get the KOs that sort of way. It's very, very nice to see that Lugia is even evolving in our meta, and we're not used to seeing the one version throughout the whole of the time. Arceus Giratina is becoming the more dominant version of Giratina to come around, and always having that slip in with Pikachu or potentially other sort of attackers. It's really, really powerful Arceus is right now, especially by doing the huge amount of damage and having the big HP. Lost Zone for the first time in a while has a combined total of 17%, which if you think about it, oh, that's still the most won, but Gardevoir is only 2% behind it. Lost Zone has really had a huge impact because of the likes of Goodra, because of the like of Flying Pikachu, and potentially even these single price attackers. Lost Zone has really fallen by the wayside. It's not as strong as it once was, even though it gained loads of these tools. But from the later set, it only gains stuff which can help limit the opponent's side, like the Spiritomb. So Lost Zone is very much in a bit of a problem. And the rest of it as well, we're seeing an increase of Arceus Flying Pikachu, even they made up the graphic, being at the nearly 4%, similar as Miraidon. These sort of decks here, Arceus Flying Pikachu, because it can use cards like Tapu Koko as well as Flying Pikachu, you can really punish the opponent by either paralyzing them or potentially not letting them attack you if they are a basic Pokemon. And Goodra as well, by the huge success at EOIC, and it did start to get a little bit more after that as well. Their amazing tanking ability, it can hit so much damage, it can heal. I think Goodra's in a very good spot. Same thing with Mew. It's kind of going down a little bit more because of the cards like Spiritomb. People are playing out a little bit more, and Mew can be very much towards like in the sort of target range. So I like we're seeing it more diverse. We're seeing it evolving where the top sort of 4 decks don't even include Lost Zone ones. We are obviously the most popular version of Lost Box still in Japan is the Lost Zone Giratina, whereas you could argue that Lost Zone Tina isn't as strong right now in sort of our sort of meta. So that's kind of where my thoughts and focus are. Gardevoir is still the top deck right now. It is, yes, the Champions Festival is in all of the winning lists actually. So what in fact didn't do well? So we're seeing this and every single thing has changed. We're seeing Lugia kind of like the colorless build, mainly focusing on the Weird did in fact get the most wins by having 6 of them, which is insane. That is doing pretty well overall, even though the league is a much lower sort of numbers. And Arceus Giratina is in the number 2 spot. She empowered number 3. Arceus like Lightning deck with Tapu Koko or Flying Pikachu or even Alolan Vulpix number 4. Lost Zone is number 5, and Gardevoir has in fact dropped all the way down to 6th place by being in the number 1 spot for 2 weekends in a row. This is a huge sort of difference, which I really like to see. We are seeing this evolution. Reason why Lugia is potentially doing it much higher up, because it can use cards like the if it falls behind, you have the Luxray, where you can immediately put it down from your hand, attach the energy, the net energy, I believe, the counter energy, sorry, and get that big one-hit KO even on its opposing side. And the Weird to flood the board of energy, switch it to the active with Jet Energy, and get the big one-hit KOs. Also with Therapy Energy, Snorlax doesn't have to be asleep now, so that's why Lugia now has a consistent single prize which can do 180 damage. Arceus Giratina is very, very strong, very, very powerful with both of the ability, both of the attack. Really, really good sort of spot, especially with the other tech options like Spiritomb, like also the cards like Flying Pikachu. She Empower was definitely a surprise to see it jump right back up. I thought it'd be similar to how Miraidon was in our meta. It was really, really well and started to fall down here. But She Empower really came in force by getting 5 wins and overtaking decks like Lost Zone and even Gardevoir. I think this is really something to really testament to how good it is. It is still focusing more on the Palkia. It's a much stronger one to get that other energy acceleration and the ways to go around a way you're not scared too much about Flying Pikachu. You have an option to attack with it and not just with Excalibur. The Lightning Wall decks is definitely an answer, especially to Lost Zone, by having the Paralyzing Lock, by having even the ability for them not to attack you, and potentially even having like Spiritomb. Arceus is in a very good spot. Like we discussed last week, Arceus is really, really powerful right now. It's definitely had a huge increase, and I like to see that we're seeing this increase in Arceus. But Lost Zone is really kind of falling down a bit. It always is doing this. It falls down a little bit more and more and more every single week, but potentially it could do really well, and we see an updated list, and then it will increase. It's always going to be fluctuating. It's never once disappeared completely, but Lost Zone is definitely, I would say, a little bit in trouble right now. Focusing more on the Greninja builders of this Charizard list, definitely right now in Japan, and even with Gardevoir dropping all the way down to the 6th spot, which everyone was hyped that it would be the BDIF. When I covered it, it really was the BDIF, but it's dropped so much because potentially people are realizing you have to pay Champions Festival to get the win, and it's very, very expensive by nearly $1,000 right there in Japan. That's why it's fallen down so much. But in every single winning list of Gardevoir, it was at least in 1 or 2 copies of it. It still was the most placed deck. It has the highest amount of top 8 placements, but I like we're seeing more of a variety. We're not just seeing Lugia or Gardevoir or Lost Zone being the most decks. We're seeing an increase of the Arceus builds and even She Empower, which is something I'm definitely excited to see the likes of. So this is kind of where I would say is right now the best 6 decks in the meta right now. Definitely something to always keep on the radar. And we have a Champions League big tournament this weekend in Japan. So it's really exciting to see if any of these 6 decks will in fact claim victorious. So let's have a breakdown of some of the winning lists. This is one of the Arceus Pikachu lists, which are kind of performing very, very well. As we can see, it's a lot of stuff I talked about in here, highly on the disruptive sort of end by playing 4 copies of Iona and 2 copies of Judge. We also play 3 copies of the Boss's Order. A lot more disruptive power with the V-Guard energy, with also Path to the Peak, and even Fan of Waves to remove one of the special energies. Flying Pikachu is very, very good because Arceus does get the 2-hit KOs, and then the Flying Pikachu can help finish off the some of the Pokemon out there, and then not get damaged for the next turn. Spiritomb to help, and Drapion to help in your Mew matchup. I really like this list, which has one with Flying Pikachu. Definitely something which I think I would never have thought of, which will be a really strong sort of archetype, like just combining just the 2 together and focusing mainly on Arceus as a power-up, and then having the Pikachu as well near the late game. I like that because you're being more disruptive with the boss, as well as the hand disruption of Iona and Judge. Definitely something which I really like the look of. Another one I like the look of is Arceus Coco. Yes, we showcased this last week, but this is a very different sort of iteration than what I showed. Again, it goes with the higher counts of disruption like Judge, Marnie, and Boss. Not Marnie, sorry, Iona. I'm so used to saying Marnie, but now we're having Iona, and even the higher counts of Path to Peak. Very, very sort of disruptive in that sort of way. It doesn't have much flexibility, and the only item cards you're mainly doing that are searching out the Pokemon, as well as even the supporter cards. I do like having the mask, which is very, very powerful in certain situations, but having the 2/2 of both Flying Pikachu and Coco is very good because you can kind of like go with, do you want to paralyze your opponent if you can't get 1-hit KO and they're the evolved Pokemon, or if they are like the Lost Box, using Flying Pikachu to get that insta KO. That's why you play the higher counts of the boss. You can use that with Starbirth, as well as having the Forest Steelstone, which is very, very good to get that potential card which you might not need if you're under Pathlock. So I like this sort of idea of this list. I do think another Arceus, yes, I know we've shown so much Arceus last week, we're showing normal Arceus this week, but Arceus is in a very good spot. And this is the Flying Pikachu Giratina Arc. It's very similar to a list that I showcased quite a few months back, but it has the updated cards, like it has Iona, it has Spiritomb, it has Path to Peak. So again, like we're seeing this more common trend in Arceus. They're going with this more disruptive theme. You want to hand disrupt your opponent to really limit their options, as well as having Path to the Peak to really stop the opponent from drawing any sort of card possible. I really like this sort of iteration because you can do that big 1-hit KOs with potentially Arceus and definitely with Giratina, but then you have Flying Pikachu to deal with your other sort of matchup, like Xianpao, like Miraidon, and potentially even cards like Lost Box, which is exactly why you play Flying Pikachu for. I think it's in a really good situation right now. Arceus Giratina, and especially with Flying Pikachu, is really, really strong because it answers those big matchups. So why we're seeing a decrease in Lost Box, but we're seeing this increase in Goodra. Goodra did pretty well overall, but this list here does play its other range of attackers. It does play the Zamazenta and a 2-3 split of Goodra V-Star. I do like this because it plays a little bit less of the searching out. It's the only way how you're getting Goodra is purely through drawing through Comfy as well as Greninja and cards like Chorus. So that's why you're playing a high count of Pokegear, because you want to draw into it and you're not using Ultra Balls to get any discarding effects to guarantee you get that Goodra. So that's why you play a higher count of them. Zamazenta is another good attacker and option in this list. Potentially doing 220 damage is really, really powerful on any of the Pokemon which might have been KO'd. As most things as well, we're seeing the return of Super Rod, so having 2 copies of these are really, really good. Especially when you see all the switching cards out in this list, you do play the 4 copies of Skate Rope and Switch Card. Overall, I would say Goodra is definitely the Lost Zone deck, which is probably maybe going up to be one of the most stronger options right now. We're not seeing Sablezard do as strong in Japan right now, but we are seeing Goodra and the Kyogre builds really performing much stronger than I thought it would be. And I thought I would showcase this Xianpao list here. It's very different to what other sort of iterations are. It does have some of the disruptive sort of effects, but it focuses more on the water side of it. Less energies, but you're not really hitting about too much. You're potentially using Palkia as a main sort of attacker. And because of how strong Iona is in this format, having a 2-2 line of Milotic is a really good Pokemon which always could be on the bench. And then your hand will never get disruptive at all. So you can always potentially have your outs like your Boss's Orders or potentially your Iridas out in play. The rest of your item cards are always the same sort of way. It's always the Pokemon Balls, Search, as well as the item cards like Rare Candy and Superior Energy Retrievals. Some things I really like in this list, we do play a Capturing Aroma, just to go around potentially the Mimikyus that may be around, or potentially any of the ability Pokemon which might be limiting you to attack. And also the Echoing Horn I really like, especially with Skate Rope, Boss's Orders, and Cross Switcher, you can go around potentially the walls of Alolan Vulpix or potentially Tapu Koko. So this is a lot more teched out version of Xianpao. We've seen it already evolve. This is one of the versions that did do well. Yes, most of them are in fact the Palkia version. There are potentially some of the just pure Xianpao and other sort of attackers with Excalibur, but we're already seeing evolving right now with Xianpao, which is a lot more versatile than Miraidon ever had. So that's something which I really like to see. We're seeing this increase in Xianpao's pure strength. Now, I've kind of named this now Lugia Color. It's like the colorless, because that's where it's really focusing on. We're seeing, yes, Weird be the most strongest sort of option, but here we're seeing more counts of Therapy Energy and a higher count of Snorlax. Radiant Serena to get that healing in, so Sableye isn't going to do as much damage as potentially they could set up would get the KO on the Kyogre potentially in next turn. And like I said, it plays a Luxray here. It is got a 1 retreat, but it potentially that one little attack KO, you can immediately bench if you're lower down in prizes. It's super, super strong. Whereas with supporter line, you're either playing more disruptive cards, like you're playing a higher count of Boss, and you're playing 2 copies of Iona, but you're also playing the outside, the 2 Lumineon and 1 Barnet. So you're getting that like pseudo battle compressor, as everyone's calling it. And again, like the item cards, all they are just searching out for the Pokemon you might need. The sport account, playing the 2 copies, Sporter Stadium, 2 Mesagoza and 1 copy of Collapse Stadium. Collapse is really, really powerful. You immediately can get rid of one of the Pokemon you may not need and immediately bump it with Lugia's Tempest Dive attack. You are going to be attacking with Lugia quite a lot in the early games. That's why we're playing the Tool Jammer. And then later game, you're playing like the Jet Energy. Weird to get that big 1-hit KO with the high count of Boss and Serena. You can get that very, very easily. And I thought I'd just showcase a little bit about Gardevoir EX. The list that's performing very, very strong. A little bit different to one I showcased a couple weeks ago. Last week. It does in fact play the 3 copies of Rare Candy. Rare Candy is definitely something which is a hit or miss in Gardevoir. If you're playing a bit slower version, like they're still playing the Mirage Step earlier, you may not need Rare Candy, but this plays Rare Candy. This also plays 2 copies of Champions Festival. I don't know how much they probably spent. Hopefully they had them already, but Champions Festival is very expensive over there. And it even plays the counter energy, plays a high count of energy, and supporter lineout is very, very similar to what we've seen overall. I really like this sort of list. I think it's very, very strong. With the Buddy Rescue, you can afford not to play 2 copies of a Drifloon because that Buddy Rescue, get another Curly you might need, or even a Manaphy if it did get discarded in the turn prior. The higher count of Iona is always where this is going. You want to be more disruptive. That's why Gardevoir is performing very strong. It may be getting all the top 8 placements because it's been disruptive Iona. It can afford to go back in time. But with the high cost of Champions Festival, it's not getting as many of that huge success because of that limiting factor. And the last big winning list I do want to showcase is Lost Zone Box. Again, nothing much has really changed. You can see it's only added new card it did get was Super Odd, as well as the Azul Town. But we've had Azul Town for about a month now for Japan. So nothing really has changed too much. That's why Lost Zone isn't performing as well. It didn't get all the fun trinkets. Once we've kind of seen it settle down, maybe it might come back. But right now, the meta is really evolving to push Lost Zone out of the way, which for us is very exciting to see. We're seeing this huge evolution chain right now, which we're not really used to for quite a while. So I do like we're seeing Lost Zone kind of go in the back burner, wait to see all these new cards come out. We might see some increase in the 151 sort of list, and Lost Zone may eventually come back out in the format. But having the Kyogre build is really, really powerful right now, especially with playing a higher count of Clara as well as the Super Rod. And I want to finish off a little bit by looking at Reggies. And Reggies did in fact get top 8. I always like showcasing some of the fun rogue decks, like last week was Dondoza, and this week is Reggies. Not as powerful as it once was, but still just as strong. It's nice to see that it's still kind of going around there. You are playing the Picnic Basket, which I like because it can go around some Gardevoir matchups. It does play the Luminous Energy. Even though you do play one other color special energy, you'll play so many of the colorless energies as well. The colored energies, you can afford to play this sort of way, and Defiant Band is very, very strong. I thought this is fun to showcase that Reggies is performing very well. This was the only top 8 list that did in fact come out with Reggies, but always having to keep on the radar that I like that people are still trying to innovate it. So I hope you have enjoyed this looking ahead video. Kind of we're going to see you next week. Will Lost Zone be just as popular, or will it kind of fall down because of the impact on the Champions League? The City League is a really good result to see exactly what potentially could do well, and this sort of helped with that. But will the Champions League really reflect it? Like remember one time where I showed Lost Box was like the number 6 spot, it jumped all the way to winning the event on the first one. So it never sort of take the impact about where it places in the top 6 placement is where it will really in the meta sort of game. So I do think we are going to see an increase of Flying Pikachu to really stop Comfeys from doing as well as they can do and get that amazing flower select out to power up any of their basic Pokemon attacking. Gardevoir, I think, could potentially see a more increase as we're going to a Champions League. It's a lot more competitive, so people might be actually either borrowing or potentially using their own Champions Festival. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's been very informative to let you know what the top 8 placement decks are in the City League. I hope you've enjoyed it because next week we're going to talk about the Champions League and really see what exactly is the huge big event, the big tournament, what is going to win it. Will we see a surprise event like Miraidon doing well, or could we see a very simple thing like Lost Box or winning, or maybe Xianpao? I'm hoping it could be a Gardevoir or obviously Xianpao to win, but we will have to see it this weekend. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure to like and subscribe and comment down below what deck you're excited to try out. It's only a month away till we're going to play out these with ourselves, so I'm really, really excited to cover and talk about it more. My name is TCG, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. Bye for now.